Anthony Fauci sat in front of the Senate Homeland Security Committee for 3 hours, and aside from an opening statement accusing Chairman Rand Paul of an unhinged obsession with slandering his reputation, he answered every single question by taking the Fifth Amendment. Republican senators used his silence to go after him personally. Josh Hawley called him a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. Rick Scott called him a villain, and Senator Bernie Moreno's team clipped his own shouted, "Who the F do you think you are?" and posted it to social media in real time during the hearing. Spontaneous. Matt, Republicans seem hell-bent on litigating what was the number one issue of 2020, the way Trump is hell-bent on litigating the 2020 election all over again. It's hard for me to see how this helps them strategically.
There is no benefit to relitigating COVID. As a strategist, I'm going to tell my candidates absolutely call for Fauci to be thrown in jail, because that is a message that works for our base. But the reason for that is very simple. Donald Trump was in charge, and the buck can't stop with him. There has to be some other villain. That's why we make it about Fauci, because we can't possibly say in an election that it was Donald Trump who made these decisions. This whole thing was performative. This was playing to the base. Let's not forget, when they attacked Fauci for pleading the fifth so many times, Donald Trump pleaded the fifth 450 times during his deposition. That is not to say we should not be investigating. But the problem here, that's not what this was all about. There was a performance for the camera, and that's all we accomplished, and it's not going to help us in November.
There is a serious, legitimate conversation to be had about the origins of COVID if there was something productive to come out of this. The bottom line on what just happened this week is this may be the single biggest sign of Republican weakness that I've seen in the last 6 months. You have unified control of government, plus the ability for the Senate to hold hearings on anything it wants to. What's next? Are we going to do Hillary's emails? Benghazi, Whitewater? They'd be better off going after Hunter Biden's art at this point. That means you just have nothing new to talk about, no new ways to distract the voters. It's a sign of glaring weakness.
Republicans postponed a critical vote on Todd Blanche's nomination, and it now looks like this may not even happen before August recess. The holdup seems to be that the Department of Justice does not want to put in writing that the $1.8 billion weaponization fund is dead. There's 2 Republicans that are probably not going to vote for him out of committee. To me, this really shows the White House complete disregard for accountability and transparency.
All that these 2 Republicans senators are asking for, Tillis and Cornyn, is give us a fig leaf here, Todd. Give us something that we can stand on when we give our inevitable yes vote to you. Never mind what I outlined last week, that Todd Blanche should never set foot in the Department of Justice again. He has undergone an illegal, immoral, and reprehensible political vendetta campaign on behalf of his client, Donald Trump. He has no business being Attorney General of the United States of America. So despite all of that, these Republican senators are just looking for an excuse. Say yes to this guy. He can't even give them that. And on the eve of his confirmation vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee, the DOJ handed out a settlement to a right-wing MAGA activist who claimed he'd been wronged. He did the exact same thing that Cornyn and Tillis were saying, please don't do this, it's wrong. And he can't help himself. He's the scorpion, and he deserves to sink beneath the waves.
What we're seeing is Republican senators starting to do their job, but it's also the strongest, best argument for term limits. Because right now, these 2 senators, Tillis and Cornyn, are the ones that are holding this up. They don't have an election, and you can see what senators could actually do if they're not in there for life.
We've got to talk about the blue state payback story that emerged in a court filing in a shocking moment of saying the quiet part out loud. A government lawyer admitted that 283 out of 284 Energy Department research grants that it canceled were for labs in states that voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, writing plainly that the funds were canceled solely because of that fact. That admission came at the exact same moment that Politico found that Donald Trump had approved disaster aid requests from Republican states at nearly 4 times the rate of Democratic states, including this month's denial of $227 million in storm aid to Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts.
I'm all for retribution in politics. That's the game. But after you're elected, you serve the people, everyone. As president, there is no blue state, no red state. It's just America. When you target these states, you're also hurting Republicans. Those cuts reach 138 congressional districts, including 28 represented by Republicans. So because these states voted for Harris or they had 2 Democrat senators, the Trump administration decided that it was going to not give aid, and it is directly hurting Republicans who are in office, Republicans that he needs their vote. It's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt America. It's a dangerous precedent we're setting that's going to come back and bite us in the ass.
Holding aside how a Rhode Island Republican should feel about this, or the fact that more Californians cast a vote for Donald Trump in 2024 than the combined total of voters in Alabama, Indiana, Kansas, and Tennessee, a point that the Atlantic raised this week. This is so deeply un-American. It's so deeply insidious. And it's something that those of us who opposed Donald Trump warned about in 2024. It wasn't just his whole Schedule F maneuver to try and give a MAGA loyalty test before allowing anyone to work for the federal government. You can't have a job unless you swear a loyalty oath to me. That doesn't sound like a fascist dictatorship. It's the fact that they were literally threatening to withhold Social Security benefits, veterans benefits, the kinds of things that Americans have earned from their government as American citizens, unless people voted for and supported the ruling regime. That is some authoritarian shit. And holding aside the issue of political revenge and things will come around and Democrats will be in control, they might do this to Republicans. Holding that aside for just a second and the unfairness of what's happening to Republicans in these states, there is this fundamental undermining of what this country is all about. It's absolutely awful. And when it comes to retribution, I can't wait for you to find what I left under your seat.
Laura Loomer, the crazy conspiracist MAGA influencer, traveled to Ukraine, met with Zelensky, experienced an air raid, and toured sites affected by the Ukraine war. She said Russia propaganda had shaped her earlier understanding of Ukraine and emerged advocating stronger for Kiev and greater pressure on Moscow. Now, this matters because Loomer is tight with Trump. She seems to call him all the time. She spent years minimizing the war. And now all of a sudden there's sanctions and Trump seems to be much more engaged. Matt, did Laura Loomer just become Ukraine's secret weapon?
I don't know what's happening here, Matt. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I think what probably happened is it's like that scene in A Clockwork Orange where Alex has his eyes pinioned open and he's exposed to awful, violent imagery. And he's like, oh, I've changed my ways. I've seen the light. This is a person who previously called Ukraine full of Nazi apologists. And then she came back from this trip to visit Vladimir Zelensky and said, I admit it, I fell for Russian propaganda. What is happening here? You could just say she's a crazy person, or you could say she's a massive political opportunist. She sees a vacuum left where Lindsey Graham used to be. And she's saying, you know what? I can occupy this space. This is a way to elevate myself in MAGA world. That's my best theory. What's yours? Republican politics better than I do.
I think she's just trying to be relevant. I think she saw this as a political opportunity. I think she went over there with the sole purpose that she could have greater influence. There's a lot of people in MAGA world that want to keep her a million miles away from Trump because she is that crazy and the things she says is that toxic. And I think this is just another way to ingratiate herself back into the movement.
As of now, at the end of this week, it is sure looking like we're entering a new, most dangerous, most tipping point phase of this war with Iran in recent days. A drone attack hit 2 ships, including a US-owned gas tanker. Saudi Arabia acknowledged for the first time that it had carried out joint strikes with the US. CENTCOM says it hit Iranian military command centers and missile and drone facilities yesterday. And so we seem to be hitting this point where the war is rapidly escalating after a brief kind of semi-ceasefire pause. This story emerged this week that the Department of Defense has been trying to retcon the history of service members who have been killed in action, trying to officially reduce the number from 18 down to 14, and also obscuring the number of American service members who have been wounded in the course of this action. This is a deeply troubling moment we seem to be hitting.
Trump is starting to get more and more angry that there hasn't been a resolution to this thing. I think the biggest change now is more countries are getting involved. We are starting to see Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Russia is helping Iran. This almost starts to feel like we're entering much more of a global kind of World War III kind of scenario. The worst case scenario, we are hiding American soldiers' injuries and deaths. We're watching this thing escalate in a point that is getting out of hand. This is a huge issue when it comes to the election, but it becomes a problematic issue for Americans going forward, our credibility in the world, and the everlasting impact this could have in the Middle East.
We focus on the political aspects of these news stories week because that's what this show is about. This is transcending the politics story. We knew that Russia was helping Iran, targeting information to go after our troops. Trump hasn't said a peep about that other than to excuse it and explain it away. We really are at a point where lots of powers are getting involved in this. It is extremely dangerous.